Letting go of dreams is not easy. I am naturally a planner, and through my life, God has taught me that his plans are very different. His plans are generally harder, but his plans are better. As a little girl, I had my entire life planned out. I had dreams of music. I had dreams of a large family. I was going to marry young and have 7 children. I was going to have 4 boys and 3 girls. I always dreamed of not just having biological children, but adopting several children. I dreamed of having a house full of foster children or children we had adopted. All I can say is God placed that in my heart. It wasn't something that I knew a bunch of adoptive families. I couldn't tell you why exactly, other than that it was something God placed in my heart, a desire he put there. All through my 20s, I was teaching piano, and God had really brought me to a place of contentment. And then all of a sudden, here comes Zach. When I met Zach, his mom was dying of cancer, just 55 years old. She ended up passing away on August 5th, the Sunday before our wedding. We had her funeral on Wednesday, and we were married on Saturday, and that proved to be the most emotional week of our lives.
For better, for worse.
For better, for worse.
We had both the low of lows and the high of highs.
Till death do us part.
Till death do us part.
I knew we were starting off in reality, but no, I couldn't have imagined everything that was going to transpire over the next several years. I mean, many people have said to us, wow, it just like started from day one for you guys and didn't stop. Zach knew my great desire for children, and so holding off children was not something we did for very long at all. I experienced a lot of early pregnancy symptoms due to Lyme disease that we did not realize I had at the time. So there were many months, actually, we got our hopes up. I got to the point where I hated to take a pregnancy test because it was just like a knife. I really didn't want to take them anymore. I remember well the day that my doctor wrote at the top of my medical notes, infertility, and I just went out to the car and cried. I was not prepared for the pain of infertility. It's grieving the loss of someone who never was. I never wanted Zach to say we could adopt just for me, just because he saw I was grieving. This had to be something that God was absolutely calling Zach and Emily to as a couple. And one day out of the blue, he came up to me and said, if we're not pregnant by January, I think we should start pursuing adoption. I cried. That time, happy tears, and like, are you serious? And my burden began to lift because adoption wasn't plan B for me either. Like, it was something I already had hoped to do anyway. And so this was like a dream come true. I remember early on in our adoption journey, hearing on Revive Our Hearts a message on adoption in the gospel. And I think that was one of the turning points that took it from something we're doing because of infertility to this is something God is calling us to. But within 6 months, we had heard no, I believe 22 times. And I remember getting on my knees and crying and saying, God, I don't think I can do this anymore. I'm tired. I hurt. This is painful. I just feel like I'm done. And a couple hours later, our phone rang, and it was our adoption consultant saying, do you remember the baby you presented your book to, the little preemie? if you will take him, he's your son. God met us right at that moment when I was at the end of my ropes and I felt like I couldn't go on anymore. And he gave us our son. His birth was very traumatic. He was born at just 28 weeks gestation in the hospital parking lot. He was born breech and had to be resuscitated at birth. So we took about 24 hours and prayed and called back the consultant and said, the little boy said his name is Levi Zachary Harmon. That's how I told her we were saying yes. I think we've been in the hospital about 24 hours. And the doctor said, I just want you to come look at this ultrasound before you sign final paperwork. We said, oh, we've already made up our mind. He said, no, I think you should see the ultrasound. And he showed me an ultrasound of a healthy brain, and he showed us the ultrasound of Levi's. And it didn't take a medical expert to know that Levi's was very different. His future was very uncertain, and the doctor said, there's no way we can tell you what his future holds, but we just want you to know what you're getting into. And we looked the doctor in the face and said, we said yes to this boy. He is our son, and no medical diagnosis is turning us back. We knew that this was the boy that God had for us. But did I have fear? Did I struggle with God? What if he is crippled? What if he does have cerebral palsy? What does that look like? But I knew that the same God had led me all this way. It was the same God who would walk with us every step of the journey ahead.
I need a 3. I need a 3 and a 9.
Oh, and a 9?
I need 3, 9.
You're right.
Levi is now 4 years old, and we look at each other all the time and say, can you imagine life without him?
9 of you?
I can't even tell you how much I love that boy.
0.
Should mommy make some numbers too?
No.
That's what I kind of think.
0, 1.
He is a healthy, happy little boy who had absolutely no cerebral palsy, no seizures.
Whoa.
Whoa.
He is a ball of energy.
Is that what that is? 0, 0, 0?
He started teaching himself how to read and write at the age of 3. And he's just remarkable. And I cannot imagine life without him. In mid-2018, I began taking a group of friends through the new Lies Women Believe that had just been updated and re-released. And I was shocked when I began working on lies we believe about God. And it said that God doesn't love me was a lie we can believe. And God began to peel back the layers of my heart, and I realized I did not believe God loved me. And things like asking for a child, a private adoption, which would be much less expensive than adopting through an agency like we did with Levi, or praying for a biological child, I just didn't do it. I didn't feel worthy. And so as I began to work through this, thing that God really does love me, I don't have to perform for him. I was in that process when I attended True Woman 18 with a group of friends. And at that conference, Nancy got up and said, hey, we have these prayer cards. We have a team of men here praying. Turn one in with your prayer requests. They're going to pray for those requests. It took a couple days of wrestling, but near the end of the conference, I turned in a prayer card that said, praying that God would give us a biological child or a private adoption. In January of 2019, a dear friend called me and she said, I was wondering if you and Zach are wanting to adopt again. She said, we know the situation of a woman who is expecting a baby in July, and it would be a private adoption, and we wanted to know if you all would pray about this. We both were taken back and like, oh my word, look at God and what he's doing. We were pretty certain we knew the answer, but we wanted to pray about it for a week because we knew that this was not an easy situation. And a couple days later, we were sitting in an attorney's office signing paperwork, meeting the birth mom for the first time. I was actually very connected to this birth mom. I would take her to appointments. But it was also very stressful because mom was in a very bad situation, and our daughter was definitely in danger. During this period of time, I began not feeling well, and I thought that my Lyme's disease was flaring up again. But I did have this nagging question in the back of my mind. Some of my symptoms were different than I had experienced before. But I knew to take a pregnancy test and have it be negative would still stir up emotions I really didn't want to stir up in my heart. So I took the test, and usually I would sit and stare at it. But this time I decided I'm just gonna leave the bathroom and set my timer for 3 minutes and come back and look. And as I walked out that bathroom, I verbally said out loud, God, if I am pregnant, I'm gonna need you more than I have ever needed you before in my life, because I had a 2-year-old and was in the middle of an adoption. And God didn't say audibly, but it's like to my heart, he said, that's exactly where I want you to be. And at that moment, I thought, it's gonna be positive. The reality of having 2 babies so close together was a little overwhelming. I realized very quickly, God is not just answering my prayer for a biological child or a private adoption, of which I wasn't praying for both, just one or the other. God said, no, I'm gonna bless you twice. We had already picked the name for our little girl that was to be born through adoption, Havala Joy. And on June 10th, I got a call at 3:18 in the morning from a nurse telling me that your daughter was just born 6.5 weeks early, 10 days before birth mom was to be released from prison. My pregnancy was going well. My doctors had told me that they had no concerns of preterm labor. There are certain things they look for, and I had none of those symptoms or signs whatsoever. So I was in complete shock when on August 23rd, I went to preterm labor 9 weeks before our daughter's due date. I'm like, this is not happening. I had a 10-week-old. I had a 2-year-old. We had just moved. I was trying to get settled, and I'm like, this is not happening. But the doctors told me it looked like they weren't going to be able to stop it. I was going into labor. I was even airlifted and taken to another hospital. And within a couple of days, they sent me home. I was on bed rest for the next 6 weeks. And then on September 30th, we went to court and finalized Havala's adoption. On a Wednesday, October 2nd, our little Elizabeth Grace was born. I always dreamed of being a mom, but I was tired. I was spiritually depleted. And one day I got a call from Rebecca Ellerman from Revive Our Hearts to thank us for a donation we had sent in. And she said, Emily, when I was in your season of life, a friend said, every week I take 2 hours and I clock out. And that is my time to refresh myself spiritually, praying, reading my Bible, doing a Bible study, reading a book that's going to strengthen me in my Christian walk. So I'd really encourage you to do that. And so we began that every Monday night. I head to my basement. And for 2 hours, I read the word, I journal, I pray. And God has used that 2 hours every week to encourage me. And I can't thank God enough. I can get the results online.
Let's see it.
You want to come see if it's a baby girl or baby boy in my tummy?
Nope.
Nope. It's a boy!
It's a boy.
It's a boy! We're having a boy!
Levi, you're gonna have a baby brother.
Do you want a baby brother in your room? Yes? Looking at my life now, it looks nothing like my childhood dreams. Nothing at all. But I wouldn't change anything. The fruit that has come from the trials, the pain, the children he's brought into our home, I wouldn't rewrite anything. My life, the dreams I had, I do have my family. I have my Prince Charming. I have biological and children that came through adoption, all of which I dreamed about. The path to get here has been far different than I ever imagined. But what I have learned about my God, the intimacy I've gained with him, the joy along the way, I wouldn't change anything. I wouldn't trade the heartaches and the hard times for the smooth dream I had. Because as for God, his way is perfect.